It was produced by our channel, 18, the City Channel 18, and it's available from their website as well sometime next week. The video will also be showing on Inside Santa Barbara or be programmed on Channel 18 from time to time. Yes?
Have some credits, because it seems very anonymous at this point. I'm sure there are people involved who should be recognized for making it.
Okay, Tony, do we do that? I think you do run credits at the end of some of your work, so great suggestion, thank you. Anyway, for today, yes? If you could talk with either me or Tony Ruggieri today, that would be great. And if anyone else has just general comments on the video, again, our UPlan Santa Barbara website is a great place to communicate with us. You could just make comments on this process overall, a comment on the video, a comment on anything that happens here today. Again, U spelled out YOU, plansb.org. Okay, so for today, I'm just going to make a few brief comments about our workshop. One is the city council has designated that we hold public events in a zero-waste format, where we've provided some food and drink for you all on plates and cups that can be composted. And we have a yellow container at the back. So all of the napkins and plates and food scraps can go into the yellow container. If by chance you have something that's recyclable, you can put that in the recycle blue container. But our goal is to have no regular garbage here today. If you have something that is regular garbage, please don't put it in the yellow container. That we have hidden a few places actual regular garbage cans, like in the bathroom. But if you put anything that isn't compostable in the yellow, then it really defeats the purpose. But we'd love to be a success here, zero waste. Yes?
Does the city of Santa Barbara actually compost waste?
Yes, we have a contract actually for folks that are picking it up. We don't have a compost yard on city property, but we're working with people to expand that use in the community. So thank you. Okay, I think I would like to just first introduce the mayor, Marty Bloom, who will make a few brief comments. Thank you.
Just 2 seconds. I'm glad to see so many people here today. I see Das Williams from our city council, but today we are here to hear from you, and we won't. Oh, and Janet Wolf too from Board of Supervisors. But we're here to hear from you, and Grant House. I could just go through the whole thing. I won't take that time. Introduce yourselves. No, it's really very heartwarming to see so many people here. You know, we have 300 board members and commissioners that help us out on a regular basis. But we really depend on the citizens, because without it, we don't look so good. It's very wonderful to have your input. And as I told somebody today, you know, if you don't participate, you really can't complain, although people do anyway, but that's okay. It's all right. So I'm really glad. And I thought the video was really wonderful. This is the first time I've seen it. But to see Pearl Chase, whom I saw when I first came to town in 1968, I saw her, but she was a much sterner person than it shows in there with her cane, and she walked into a room, everybody was quiet. I don't think we have that kind of person here right now, but she was very wonderful. So it's good to see the history and to see the history of citizen involvement. And I know some of you are brand new to the community. We welcome you, and we have a wonderful community because of the citizen involvement. So I'm really glad that we're doing this. It's very exciting work for policy wonks like me. So congratulations on being here, and thanks so much on your Saturday morning.
I'd like to turn the microphone over to Daniel Isofano, who is a principal in a consulting group called MIG, headquarters up in the Bay Area. The MIG group has worked with us throughout a number of city programs, including our last major general plan update in the late 80s. But they've also been involved in more current efforts with watershed planning. The group is renowned, with Daniel individually, both recognized nationally and internationally for his innovative public outreach and planning with a focus on planning. So the City Council, again, in setting goals for this process, is to have a lot of public involvement and engagement, that this is a public planning process. And so Daniel and his group are helping us in that regard, and he'll be moderating today's workshop. Thank you, Daniel.
Very good. Thank you very much, Betty, and thanks to all of you for coming out this morning. We appreciate your willingness to share Saturday with us on what we think is an extremely important effort to look at the next 20 to 30 or more years in the future and think about how Santa Barbara should grow and develop. Even if you wanted things to stay the same, as I know many of you do value and appreciate very much the quality of the environment here, it's true that forces are at work nevertheless and will act on this city and cause it to move in certain directions. So the question is, how do you all respond to that? What are the ideas and the concepts, the policies and the programs that will make sure that this city remains high quality and meets your needs well into the future? We have things like global climate change, the internet, globalization of the economy. All of these are new terms that didn't exist 20 years ago when the general plan was last being updated. So clearly the world is a different place than what it was then, and it requires us to keep our eye on the future, looking at current conditions, issues, and trends, see where those are taking us, and begin to make adjustments accordingly. And essentially that's what we hope to do this morning in a very brief way, to give you a summary of what we call some of the background conditions, trends, and issues that have been identified by staff in preparing for this general plan update. Let's just get a quick show of hands, though. How many people understand or have heard the term general plan? Do you all have a sense of that? Wow, almost uniform. You know, and that's, again, speaking to the history and the tradition and legacy of community participation here, because that question, we would not get the same response in every community. It sounds like a rather esoteric or even arcane topic when you broach the subject of a general plan. Maybe only planners would be interested, but this is a city full of planners. All of you are very adept and very sophisticated in how you look at the environment and how you see your role in shaping that environment. So in the presentation, we want to expand somewhat on the themes introduced by the video presentation, talk about the legacy of community planning again, and what we see as some of the pressing issues of today. The agenda here this morning is for us to have a brief discussion as a large group. We'll talk about some of the impressions you have of the city, some of the starting points for future planning, but then we'll have a round of small groups. We've had great success with these workshops. So far we've reached close to 1,000 with our grassroots outreach efforts and the individual community workshops. So we're well on the way to getting the level of effort and participation that the City Council has envisioned here. Again, this is a long-term look at the city. We're not focused on current projects or problems. We're not looking at traffic signals or stop signs at individual locations, but we're considering the whole pattern of issues around transportation, housing, land use. All of these issues are relevant, and we're not claiming to have them all identified either. That's what this process is for, and you're helping to do that by your participation today. We want you to think about the future and essentially help us describe it. And the more accurate we are and more articulate we are in describing that future, the better able we are to bring it about. So that's an important key question. We'll ask you about what you love the most about Santa Barbara, and the reason for the question, while it might seem obvious in some ways, is so we understand what you value the most, what's significant, what's important to carry forward into the future, and let's make sure we don't inadvertently undermine the very things that are held dear today as we plan the future. So these are important questions, as well as some of the key issues that you feel need to be addressed by the city. As the video well pointed out, the legacy of planning here is well known, and a lot of issues that have been addressed in the past were done so in a way that prepared us and prepared the city and has resulted in a strong image and identity and character for the city, most notably the architecture, the design, the open space networks that we all enjoy today. And there are many, many examples, too many to name just all of them here in the video. a great downtown, very pedestrian-oriented, well-known throughout the state for a vitality and a vibrancy that is evident as you walk out on the street. You're known also amongst planners for the growth management policies that have been put in place. Measure E is one of those key documents and is very central to the ongoing work of the general plan. So as we look forward, we have begun to analyze existing conditions. And this document called the CTI report, or Conditions, Trends, and Issues, you can see is a rather thick document, and you're very much welcome to go online, view that document. You can get copies at the library. You can download it. It's well worth reading and getting a deeper understanding of the issues. But if you don't have the time to do that, there will be summaries available, and this PowerPoint is one of those. There are also other documents. Some of you also participated over the last year, year and a half in the Upper State Street workshops. Right here at Hope School, we held several workshops on that topic, focusing at the Upper State Street area. And that workshop series has informed us as to how we should proceed here. We used very effectively background information, reports. We had great discussions with a lot of you. I see familiar faces from those workshops. So the starting point here for this update and future planning is, again, a background in information data that helps to gauge current conditions. Air quality, for example, one of these key topics. We are currently in attainment and do meet the state and federal standards. That's good news. And again, like many of these things, they have to be monitored. You can't assume that the conditions of today will be the same in the future. We know that greenhouse gas now is an issue. That was not talked about. You know, I heard on NPR that was 1988 when the esteemed scientists from NASA came before the Senate in the United States Congress to testify on this issue of greenhouse gas and the greenhouse effect. People didn't know what that was. So that's 20 years ago there, and it's now at the forefront of our local state policy for sure, and it's starting to take hold around the world. So it goes to show that while we've made progress on a number of fronts, new issues occur, new issues pop up which need to be addressed. Water quality, similarly, is something that is now at the forefront. And here in Santa Barbara, you undertook a creeks and beaches clean program to look at the water quality. You know that without protection there, you would undermine the quality of life, the ocean quality. We depend on the watersheds for our health of habitats and species and our tourist industry, for example. So when you look at all of these interests in combination, there's huge impetus to make sure that our environment is clean, is quality, and meets our expectations, and also serves the needs of future generations. So right now, urban runoff, this so-called non-point source pollution effect, is something the city is very focused on. And some time ago, I think maybe within the last year and a half, 2 years, the city sent out a brochure about Santa Barbara's living watersheds and oceans. How many people remember receiving a copy of that in the mail? Every household got a copy of it. And again, it's part of the innovation that Santa Barbara is known for, really putting that issue forward. And so this general plan will no doubt pay very close attention to that issue. Now, 20 years ago, again, to provide a perspective here, water supply was on everybody's minds. The Cachuma Reservoir was down. It looked very ominous, and the threats to the whole livelihood of Santa Barbara were very clear at that point. And you can see how over time the waterfall or the rainfall changes from year to year, and therefore we have to be very vigilant here. So while today we do have adequate water supply, we can't necessarily guarantee that in the future. So water quality and water supply do need to be monitored carefully. Solid waste and wastewater. City has done a good job in providing for these needed capacities, but as you can see on the slide, we have a 15-year capacity, at the Tehiguas landfill, and we'll need to be thinking how we not only reduce waste, recycle, pre-cycle, and just in general engage in activities that don't generate waste in the first place. So all of these are important elements. The sewer system, which is largely invisible, and we hope it functions, and we're always concerned when it doesn't, needs repair and upgrading. So those are investments that the city must continue to make in infrastructure. Parks and recreation, also a theme very well covered in the video this morning. We do see that as a type of community infrastructure as well, and without adequate parks and open space, areas to protect critical habitat, but also recreation for our children, for our youth, for families to gather. These are critical components of what makes a community. We ensure that there is adequate facilities and capacities going into the future. So very important planning consideration for this U-Plan Santa Barbara. Land use and housing is clearly at the center of these issues as well. You heard in the video about Measure E, and that is slated to expire in 2010. So we need to have a new policy to carry us forward, and the City Council therefore wisely set in motion this general plan outreach and update in order to get ready for that particular issue. 1,600 units of housing are currently in the pipeline, so those are already approved under current land use and zoning regulations. Many are multifamily condo-type units, and many of these are in the affordable category as defined by the State Housing Authority, HCD. So there has been a major and concerted effort to address affordable housing, but as we know, given the prices here, the desirability of this community, and the scarcity of land, all of these forces conspire to put even greater pressure on the affordability aspect. So it's something that you have to consider from a policy standpoint. How do you ensure that you have space for teachers, for fire people, for police, and other workers that make the town what it is? So we're not talking about somebody other than the people in this room in a lot of cases. So to have a complete community, you need to consider how you're dealing with the issue of affordability of housing, availability at different price points and different configurations to meet the needs of a diverse community that you are. And at the same time, preserving the historic character and quality of the neighborhoods, which people do appreciate and value as well. Transportation here on the South Coast is a very strong issue and will continue to be debated, no doubt, very much into the future. The congestion on 101, how do we provide for a true multimodal type system? We've heard a lot of discussion along those lines in the workshops to this point, and we'd like to hear more discussion from you on that topic. How do we create a balanced system that also deals with traffic in and around and through neighborhoods to moderate that or calm the traffic as is used, as you see some of the devices there. You can see here's one rather high-tech version, I guess, of traffic calming. But I guess whatever works, you need to apply all of those techniques. Urban design and the visual quality of this environment needs to be addressed, and we see that as a major focal point. And over the last few years, in addition, the City Council has gotten a lot of input, a lot of questions from the neighborhoods, from community members such as you about how do we preserve this quality? How do we continue to address community needs, but do so in a way that protects the views of the ocean, of the mountains, of the watersheds? All of these seemingly conflicting goals and objectives need to be integrated and balanced somehow, and that's what makes a good community. Again, on the process, Betty talked about this earlier, and we want to touch on this once again so you have a general scheme of how this lays out. I've mentioned this outreach bottoms-up tour of going out to the communities, to the organizations, as was mentioned, maybe 100 or so have been identified at this point, and more keep surfacing. And if you have a group or an organization, a homeowner association, that would like to have a customized workshop or presentation by city staff or members of the outreach committee that has been formed by the city council, you just need to signal that and make us aware of it, and we'll put a program together that meets your needs and time frame. So it's been a very successful way of getting out to new folks who haven't been involved as directly in planning matters heretofore. We are doing this round of workshops here in June and July, and we expect to do these again in the future going into the next year. We'll have a series of meetings with our boards and commissions, and also in the fall what we're calling these educational forums. We hope to identify and bring on board some prominent speakers, local and national, to address key issues that surface through these workshops. The idea being that we can learn from other people's examples. We can gather best practices from all over the world to apply here, or at least to consider as we shape our future direction. So we want this to be a very intelligently guided process. We're not going to rush to any quick decisions here by any means. Going into the spring of 2008, we expect another round of workshops such as the ones we're doing today, and we hope to bring more specific policy options for your consideration. And there will be more boards and commissions involvement throughout 2008, 2009, and you now see why this is a very extensive process. All the way to the summer of 2009, City Council would consider adoption of this new strategic policy framework that we'll call Plan Santa Barbara. We deliberately took the number off. Sometimes you've seen, you know, Plan 2020, which was a popular acronym some time ago with the advent of the millennia, and now 2030 was considered. But you know, we're thinking we just have to look at the whole long-range future, so Plan Santa Barbara was adopted for that reason. And once again, please join us by visiting the website and other means of communicating with us. You'll find that if you go on the website, uplansb.org, you can actually sign up there and receive regular automatic email messages, and we promise it will not be spam. It is a way for you to stay current. Anytime information on the site changes, you might get an email automatically that says what that change is, and you can click on the email message and go right to that new material. And that can be also adjusted according to your preference. So there are a lot of custom features there. And as Betty mentioned, you can go on there and also give us direct feedback. And believe it or not, everything is read, analyzed, summarized, put into reports, and brought to the Planning Commission, to the City Council, and all our boards and commissions. And then that data, or the feedback you give us, is further reflected on the website. So we'll have an electronic library, a repository of all of the information generated from these community workshops and throughout the UPlan Santa Barbara program. So we'll never be at a loss to find that information, which, given the Web 2.0 technology which is being deployed here, is a great advantage over what we had to work with 20 years ago. So it allows us to have this ongoing community conversation about the future of Santa Barbara in real time, as we're doing today, and in virtual time using the web. So please visit that website. I think you'll find it very useful and a great one-stop shop for all of our needs on this planning effort. So we're going to switch to our live discussion here. We've dealt with a variety of media this morning already, and I want to go back to those key initial questions where we posed to you, well, what do you love most about Santa Barbara? What do you consider to be the key assets of this community? And the strengths. What makes Santa Barbara very dear and very unique in your mind? And we'll be passing the microphone to see how you might answer that question. And we'd like to ask, secondly, what are your visions for the future of the city? So we'll start with the question about assets, what you love the most. We'll talk about vision, and then we'll be able to shift into our smaller group discussions where we can get more into depth on the various topics that we've illustrated this morning. So we'll be passing the microphone around, And there's one up here, and we'll get another live one going. Who would like to start us off this morning with your thoughts about what you consider to be Santa Barbara's greatest assets? What do you think are the most important things here that perhaps drew you to the city in the first place if you moved from another location and came to live here? What would you consider to be major assets? What do you love the most? So let's get started here. Who would like to answer that question? Yes, ma'am, please go ahead.
Well, I think what I like so much about Santa Barbara are the views that we have. Santa Barbara is very easy on the eyes.
Easy on the eyes. That's a good phrase. It is beautiful. I think everyone knows that. How long have you lived here, by the way?
Since 1965.
Okay, just a few years before Marty said you came to the city in 1968. So a lot of, yeah, there you go. Okay, right there, Michelle, thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
I really love the human scale and the views of beautiful views of the mountains and the ocean. When I moved here in the late 80s, I felt that it was a very complete community, and I'm really lamenting the loss of local businesses. I'm feeling that we're losing something vital here. Those are my thoughts.
When you talk about human scale, could you say more about that? What defines that for you? What's human scale to you?
Well, buildings that aren't overly tall, some of the paseos downtown add an incredible charm. Our neighborhoods have evolved into very livable neighborhoods. I frequently go down to West LA, drive through Malibu, see what other neighborhoods are starting to look like. And I did come from Orange County prior to Santa Barbara and saw how that area was just devastated.
Interesting. Very good. Thank you. So human scale is not being overwhelmed by the physical environment, where you feel in control and comfortable in terms of the size and mass and balance of what's developed, what's not developed. Let's go to this lady here and then all the way over to this side. Yes.
I love how much people care about Santa Barbara, how much the people of the community really love and care about it, as you can see from this crowd.
Absolutely. That should be mentioned. Thank you very much. Yes, Gil?
I like how our low-density small town has 99% one- and two-story buildings height. It's this one- and two-story height that gives our town its wonderful small-town character. Also, we need to change the current 60-foot height limit to 40 feet, and we also need to reject high-density, mixed-use smart growth, which is ruining our small-town character.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So we're jumping into the next question here about vision and future direction, as well as talking about what we like today. But let's keep going. There's a gentleman right there. Yes, sir.
I came here 5 years ago from Albany, New York, and was interviewed in January, so you'd expect the reason I came was the weather, right? And that's an easy answer, and it's an easy answer to talk about the beautiful views and the ocean and the mountains. But that's not what brought me here, and it's not what keeps me here at this point. It really is the people. There's a lack of cynicism here that I found so wonderfully, wonderfully refreshing coming from the Northeast. And a reaction to looking at the future that said, what can we do to make that work? As opposed to what I experienced in the Northeast, which was often, oh, no, we can't even consider that. And that was what drew me here. When I look to the future, my dreams for the future here are that this not turn into the bifurcated community that it looks to be turning into, but instead that it continue to have a place for people like me.
When you say bifurcated, thank you, you mean in terms of income strata or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, very good. Nice thoughts, and it's great to have perspectives of veterans and newcomers because it helps us to appreciate the full range of what we have here. Yes, sir.
Yes, I am very pleased with the relatively decent air quality. I stress relatively because what the PowerPoint said that we are in generally in attainment of all the standards.
Right.
It depends on your definition of is, or
Right.
generally, because the Air Pollution Control District's website clearly states the kinds of things we are not in attainment. And this leads to the next point, namely, we should not ever become complacent about what we have and think it will be okay because we are ahead of everybody else. We might be ahead of some northeastern communities, but the air quality really is a problem. And if you bear with me just a minute, I think that there have been recent scientific studies showing the significant health risks involved in living too close both to freeways and to city traffic corridors. And of course there is great advantage in putting people close to where the transit goes. I myself don't drive, I always ride the buses, I walk. And I am very pleased to be close enough to State Street. But there is also a point where it becomes too close. And these studies, which I submitted to the abstracts of which I submitted to the city, but unfortunately they can't be put on the public website, but anybody who sees me during the intermission, please give me your address if you are interested. I would be very happy to supply copies.
Very good.
I think it is really quite important that there are very significant health risks, particularly for children. So I think if we want to put people close to bus lines, we should at least put them a block away and not right where the impact, which I can illustrate if you give me your address, is the worst.
Excellent.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. And again,
And I wonder what of this will get put down on the whiteboard, complacency or any of those kinds of concepts.
okay, avoiding complacency, being active and engaged is the antidote. Yes, ma'am, in the back there, please.
Well, we just got back from a driving tour from Yellowstone through Wyoming and South Dakota, and when I came back, it's through contrast that you recognize the assets of your community.
Right.
And what I noticed is we have a very walkable community. My son is very fortunate to, for the last 8 years, being able to walk to his school. And I hope that every child has that experience. So if we can make those connections between home and schools in a safe, walkable way, I think we're really doing a great advantage for our children. So I would say walkability is a big asset that we should try to preserve.
Excellent. Thank you. And that's an asset and a vision about the future to make sure we have that. And I like your comment, too, about contrast. That's how we can begin to see more sharply exactly what we do have. This lady here was next. We'll get to everybody, so thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I think one of the things that I like the best is the public spaces and the parks, and I do know that there are areas that don't have parks. That was noted in the slides, but and that ties into the walkability. But the view, and when there were new buildings built, you know, that there be some consideration that there be public space given in view, and maybe plaza or whatever to the public.
Very good. Yeah, so the design of these public spaces becomes a critical thing. We can be more refined here as we look at, the remaining areas we have to work with. Yes, ma'am.
As I was conceived on Grand Avenue, so 1935.
Okay. There's a lot of information there. I don't know how much more we want, but
it's the small town feel, and I know a lot of you probably don't believe that there are so many of us natives still here in Santa Barbara, and we cherish the view, the buildings, and I have to tell you that every ugly building that has gone up in Santa Barbara has been disdained and has gone belly up. It's now.
So ugly buildings need not.
Yes,
apply
and
there.
we are constantly amazed at the people that want to move to Santa Barbara and love it, and the first thing they want to do is change it.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. A nice perspective. Let's go to this gentleman, and then also way in the back there, be on the other side. There's a couple of gentlemen and a lady there. Go ahead, sir.
Excuse me.
It needs to be recognized that Santa Barbara is a visitor and retirement community. This is true since the late 19th century. It are these attributes that brought the visitors that came to Santa Barbara then became permanent residents. And these former visitors are those that have made the community. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Yes, they're a great source of economic vitality. Yes, the lady back there and also here.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I cherish the trees and the flowers in this community. It seems like now we're beginning to tear down some of the trees, which gave this town remarkable feel. You could walk down State Street and it was gorgeous and canopied. I'd like to see that retained instead of continued to.
Excellent, very good. Yes, ma'am, in the back there. And you can talk about your visions for the future now, too. We want to hear how you think things might evolve. What are some of the ways you would describe your ideal community 25 or 50 years going forward? So that's another part of the discussion we'd like to enter into. Yes.
I think one of the important things in Santa Barbara is the diversity of the population and the difficulty with affordability and foreseeing potential conflicts. I think the city's doing a great job in trying to bring people together. I was born and raised in Santa Barbara. The majority of my friends can no longer afford to live here, so keeping things affordable and keeping people living together happily. All of the community events that we have, I think, really work to bring people together. So I think those things are all positive aspects.
Right, very good. Creating a sense of community. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good morning. I cherish the people. I cherish our diversity. And I just, as far as vision, I'd like to talk about this is not just for who's here. It's who's here down the road. Who do we want here down the road? And I think that we're on the precipice of losing a lot of that. The people are what makes Santa Barbara. The vision, the aesthetics, that's all part of it as well. But if we lose out on that diversity, that's a major blow to the character of what Santa Barbara is. I think that, at least that I know of, there's probably 3 people from my graduating class here. That says a lot, right? And I think, people talk about growth and where we want it. Put it in the urban core. Let's not start pushing it out towards these, like Gaviota and all these places that we want to preserve. You have an infrastructure. Let's use it. Put it in the urban core around State Street.
Okay, very good. Some very visionary thoughts. Let's take this lady right here.
Yes, when the gentleman over here was talking about Santa Barbara being a community for visitors and retirees, there are a whole lot of us worker bees here who also need to live here for you to have this lovely community for the visitors and for the retirees. And so, and I love this community. I do love the people. I love all of the views. I just hope that we continue to work towards making it a bit more affordable for all of the people that work at the dental offices like myself or anywhere, because we're needed. We have to be here, and yet there isn't anywhere for us to live. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know that I think here in Santa Barbara area, the starting teacher's salary is $42,000 or $43,000, and we all know what that would translate in terms of a housing. And when the median house price is $1.3 million, you can't square those two. Right. So I think these problems have to be resolved. We need some creative ways of doing that without destroying these very qualities that have made Santa Barbara what it is. The gentleman back there, you've been waiting quite a while.
Thank you. Thank you for the recognition. I've been living in the community for the past 32 years, and my children were born here, and I didn't plan on staying here until the day of my death, put it this way. I've seen a lot of changes in the past 32 years, and what I would like to see in the future of our city is that we do not have the gang problem. We do not have to deal with the graffiti, G13 being posted all over the place. I don't want to see gang fights on July the 4th. I don't want to see gang fights in front of the pizza parlor on the ocean front. And above all, let's ask ourselves a basic question. What good is it, what kind of quality of life you would be looking for if you have to live in a house that has to be put bars on the window, or when you walk down the State Street, that you be approached very, very upfrontly, give me some money. Or when you go down, walking on the waterfront and not knowing if your life is safe enough to enjoy the scenery, the serenity of the surrounding, and also the quality of Santa Barbara life. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Safety, security on a personal level, a family level, a community level, these are critical values. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you mentioned for the future, I hope Santa Barbara retains its distinct qualities, like its small-scale ambiance and the 1 and 2 stories, because if you compare what's happened with like Westwood Village, Pasadena, too many areas have gone the high-rise, and they're just crowded and unpleasant now.
Okay, very good. Those are very concrete images. Yes, sir?
I'd have to echo what I've heard many people say already. One of the most desirable aspects of Santa Barbara is the geography, the mountains, the ocean. But I'd also have to say at the very top of the list is the architecture and the development. When it's done smartly. Most of the trees and plants and stuff we have here were not native. We brought them here. So I think that growth can be managed. I don't know if it can be controlled, but when we develop in a smart way, I think there's a lot of areas in Santa Barbara that are just kind of vacant and attracting weeds and even garbage. Those things, places can be developed very beautifully.
So it's shaping that development, designing it well, having the right mix and the right location is all part of the formula you described. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I work in the medical community, and so I have a couple issues that are related to that. One is that we definitely have trouble attracting and keeping affordable staff, especially physicians in the community. And the other is just appreciating the fact that we do have a community that's climate conducive to exercise and fitness, and I'd like to continue to see that as a priority. We have a huge incidence of childhood obesity developing, and I think that that's because our kids can't walk to schools. The bike paths are not safe. We don't have a lot of bike paths available. We have a few, but we certainly could improve on those things.
It's very interesting because it used to be that the neighborhood school was the basis for a neighborhood. And all the children walked to it because it was safe and parents could rely on their neighbors being there. Things have changed. How do we bring that back? And a lot of discussions nationwide are taking place on this front. And you've all mentioned walkability, connectivity, social diversity of neighborhoods. These all fit together, and the health of the community. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. This is really difficult. My name is Jennifer, and I was raised here in Santa Barbara. And what do I love about Santa Barbara? Well, we all knew each other. And actually, there's a song that I actually went to Alaska for 7 years and was a part of the Native community there. But my roots are here, the Channel Islands. We lived out there, and my family came here in '42. It's changed a lot. And my grandmother raised me, and one of the things. I remember it being 6 years old, and I'd go home on the bus by myself from downtown. We didn't have a car. I didn't grow up with a car. I had to walk to Roosevelt. I hated it, but I did it from the Riviera. We have terrible bus service now. I mean, we do have some, but it's not. It used to be on the hour, every hour until 5:30, and then we couldn't go out at night because we didn't have a car. So we had to walk. Anyway, I miss Santa Barbara. I miss my friends. I came home thinking, oh, boy, I'm going to, and I go to reunions and they're like, you still live here? What? And I'm like, why not? Weren't we supposed to live here? Is there something wrong with that? I don't know. There's just so much to address, but I just think that the buildings have gotten too high, and maybe I'm on the wrong track here. But I used to surf. I used to go all these places, and now I don't even want to leave the house. I go downtown. I don't know the storefronts anymore. There's no place to park. They just put a parking garage in, and they took all the parking off of that one block, and then they just took it off of Anapamu. And I was at least happy when they had that, but there's like no Woolworths. There's like nothing on that one block. But so those were my favorite memories because we always had Woolworths. Woolworths was like the heart of Santa Barbara. All the old ladies were in there. We all go to the, you know, the little counter, and we loved that. And we all knew each other. And there was a song from Carnival, and it was called Mira. And I come from a town in Mira, and where everybody knew each other's names. A place that's strange is never cozy. I want to have a street that knows my feet, you know, and people who know my name. And I go downtown, and people are on cell phones, and now there's Starbucks on every corner. In my old Victoria Pharmacy, and I couldn't walk them there. So that's what I want to say. It's just really hard for me. And in the year 2000, I noticed on television about this time of year on KEYT that a girl went missing, a young Hispanic girl named Anita Lara. And what I used to love about Santa Barbara is that I know that when I was in high school, when a girl went missing, you looked for her. I can promise you now, I don't think there was anything where we looked for her for a year. And finally, they found out 19 months later that she had been put in a garbage bag above the girls' club and was transported to Tahigas landfill. And her family didn't even know where she was. So to me, that's not the Santa Barbara I grew up in. And I want to know if the police have the funds to have enough police to take care of those matters. And we should all jump on the bandwagon, because when Danielle Van Dam went missing in San Diego, the whole community rose up. And if it weren't for volunteers, Westerfield would not be facing what he's facing now. So I just want to say that's the community I want to live in. And St. Francis should be for long-term care for seniors who built this community. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. A lot of good stories about what makes a real community and what we need to do to protect it. Yes, ma'am, right up here.
Hi, I value everything that everyone's mentioned already, and I live in Santa Barbara, work in Goleta, and I would like to see a community in the future where one does not have to depend upon one's car for daily things, getting to work, getting to school, basic errands, so that there are shops and stores within walking distance of most homes, that children can walk to school or bike to school in a safe way. I think that means that we have to coordinate with a broader community than just Santa Barbara. It means Goleta, it means Carpinteria, and I work for a company where we have employees, because of the cost of housing, who live in Lompoc or Ventura and commute. And I think we have to recognize the impact that the cost of housing has on the sustainability of the community, as well as on any economic vibrancy that we might hope to have here.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you. We probably have time for another few minutes of comments, and then we'll have our small groups where we can go in much more depth. And trying to get some people who haven't spoken yet to the large group. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm hoping that this whole process, that a primary focus is on the question of growth. Growth hasn't been the hot topic it has been in the past years, because we haven't had tremendous growth in the last few years, but we've been damn lucky that what we've been doing has been working, and that if we don't revive our vigilance, this could all change, because a place like this has tremendous development pressures upon it from two directions. One, really desirable places can change overnight if you're not vigilant. We have development pressure because we want to have affordable housing, and we're willing to try just about anything to build it. So we got to decide whether we're going to draw some lines in the sand about growth. All the other issues we've been talking about pretty much are pinned on this one issue. And I don't think those decisions can be made by groups like this. They shouldn't be made by city staff or even the city boards and commissions of the city council. We need, if we're going to make firm commitments, they have to be backed by a community consensus, and I think the only way we can get that is through ballot measures where everybody can get a vote on the main issues, even if they're advisory. We need a way of gauging a consensus, and I think that's it. So my points are growth issue and ballot measures to
well, and both of which you've dealt with in the past. That is luckily part of the history here in Santa Barbara. Yes, sir. Wait, we need the microphone to you. Sorry. We're just trying to...
Wait a minute, Doss. I got the microphone. Then I'll give it to you.
Okay, why don't you go and then we'll get everything. Don't bogart that microphone.
I won't. I mean, one of the great things about Santa Barbara is that we have a heritage that so few communities in, certainly the West Coast have, that we are naturally constrained, and that has helped to create a livable community that we now know we call smart growth, but in fact we've been able to do that to a great degree, or much more than most communities. I think we've got to all be real that I don't care where you grew up in the world, the place you grew up has changed. Change is inevitable, and thank goodness that what we're doing here is directing the change rather than simply going through the change. We have to maintain the diversity of this community. We cannot, at the expense of the preservation of mountain views or creating a 1- and 2-story community, create a community that does not have a rich economic and social diversity. So I think all of these things, I want to see a dialogue where there is a blending of the needs and a recognition that this change has to be guided very carefully. And if we focus too much on one thing, we're going to miss out, and the community will change forever in a negative way.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for passing the microphone. Go ahead, sir.
So the two things that I wanted to say are difficult to accomplish at the same time. But I'd like to live in a community, first of all, where the green belt around the city is preserved, that Hidden Valley and the Las Positas Valley and Gaviota are not developed. And I also want to live in a community where I'm not the last person that makes under $60,000 a year that's able to buy a 1-bedroom condo. I really hope that, and I wonder if that's going to be the case.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. Some very clear measures. Let's take this lady, and we have just time for a couple more here. And again, we'll have the small groups. I think the lady behind you first, and then we'll go up to you. Yes.
Hi, I've lived in Santa Barbara for about 9 years now, and I grew up in the Southern California coast in Manhattan Beach, and I was delighted to move here in '98 and discover that there's a vibrant, alive arts and cultural town just right up the road from where I grew up. And I just have to say that I have to give this town a lot of thanks for being very nurturing to me, and I think it's one of the safest places to live in all of Southern California, even though I realize we do have crime, and I really appreciate the people that have brought that up and how much we need to do more about that. But I just think that the Planning Commission is doing an excellent job in holding these hearings, and I think that the things I like about this town the most are the natural settings, the coast, the mountains, the beaches, and I like the ways that we care for each other. I like, our many helpful nonprofits, the way that you help us get involved with the community in so many different ways, and I especially love the solstice celebration. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. This lady back here, and then right up here, Michelle, and then we are going to move into our small groups. Go ahead.
Hi, I've been here about 6 years, and 4 of those years I've been working with Habitat for Humanity. And there's been a lot of conversation here today about affordable housing. And I just have to commend this community, not only for the political support and the financial support. In this room are several supporters, friends, and volunteers that have helped us build some affordable housing. So what I found in this community is I've been here 7 years, and I know more people than I ever knew in my previous community. And all of those people are creative, they're compassionate, they're hardworking, and I just love the people here.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Well, nobody has mentioned downtown. When we came here, all our neighbors worked downtown. They had their shops downtown. And I remember going to see one of my neighbors when he was much older, and he was very ill. And I remembered suddenly he had a shop downtown, a printing shop. And now it's all Nordstrom's. You know, I think that was the beginning of the downfall of Santa Barbara when we got to look downtown like, we're just the outskirts of, well, we're the outskirts. You don't live downtown. It's like going to work in New York City and then riding and going home. And that was a sort of signal to us that if you want a small town, you're going to have to fight like hell to keep it.
Yeah.
Because downtown, it's not a small town.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling that Santa Barbara gives you now.
Yeah.
And I think it's too bad. I have no idea how to reverse that.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Those are excellent thoughts and observations. Leo, if we could just take your comment as the last one here.
Thank you.
And then we'll do our breakout groups.
I don't think you guys got climate. I think it was mentioned, climate.
Okay.
And all of these things are great. I support everything. I don't think any of it's going to happen without good, solid campaign finance reform. None of it. You can't be too radical about this. I don't think it's possible.
Thank you all very much. This has been a very productive morning, and we thank you all for making it so.